Hello all and welcome to the Business Continues Virtual Podcast. My name is Connor Slasberg and today we're hoping to put the doom and gloom away and focus on some of the positives within our lives and businesses. On this week's roundtable, I am joined by Simon, Jules, Scott and Frazer. Thank you all for joining me. This week is all about selling in a scary world, but before we start, it would be great to hear a little from each of you about who you are, what you do, and in an old networking cliche, let's get to know you all a bit better by telling us the first sales job you had. So we will go in the order of my screen. We'll start with Jules, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
I thought you'd start with me somehow. Hi, I'm Jules White. So my business is Live It, Love It, Sell It. Hopefully you'll remember that. My first sales job, I was debating this. Shall I tell you the serious one or shall I tell you the first one where I ever had to sell anything? So I'm going to go for the latter. I worked at 15 years old on the stockings and underwear stall on Stevenage Open Market.
Nice, thank you very much. We'll go to Simon.
Was that me, Connor? Sorry.
That was you, Simon. Yes,
that's me. So,
good.
Hi everyone. Simon Portwain. I work with Connor in the new business team at ACS. I also wrote a book in my spare time called Sales Icon, which is just recently out. My first sales job was I worked in. Doesn't sound very glamorous, but I worked in the water heating and ventilation industry, which is a posh name for I sold showers and extractor fans, which sounds really dull and really boring, but it was actually one of the most fun jobs I had. And I remember the first time I started in sales, it was back when you just used to get given a laptop and a phone, and basically they kick you out the door and say good luck. So a bit different nowadays, but yeah, great job. That was my first in sales.
I like the jazzy title you gave it as well to jazz it up a bit. That was
that's it.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Simon, Scott, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Scott from 123 Internet Group. First sales job. God. It's probably when I just got literally being issued with a national insurance card, and I used to work for the old high street giant Woolworths, which was fantastic at the time. I remember it well. Great little community spirit. But yeah, I used to work on the main floor, but generally on the sweets area. So nice. I was there helping people, making sure they could pick the right sweets.
Good. I'm sure you learned how to hold some engaging conversations in that section of the business. Thank you, Scott. And last but not least, you were on our very first Business Continues Virtual Roundtable. So hopefully you'll have seen a marked improvement from that session today, Frazer. But if you wanted to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Frazer. I'm from All Things Business, the business publication in Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes. My first sales job was 21 years ago, and I was on a youth training scheme for Beatties, what was the department store in Northampton. I used to work on the linen department, so I used to sell bed covers, duvets, towels, pillowcases and stuff like that. Riveting at the age of 16, that was.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And then I am Connor Slasberg. I work with Simon at ACS. My first sales job wasn't directly a sales job, but it was at Homebase. And I was on the shop floor doing all the fitting the shelves, which I was woeful at. I was awful at that element of it, but I was really good at doing the upselling part. And I think that's kind of where I decided I wanted to get into a sales career. So that's me. So thank you all for your introductions. I'm going to warn you, I'll probably jump it somewhere here because I'm not wearing my glasses because it's so sweaty. I could just feel them sticking to my face. So I'm going to slip up at points, but don't point me out too much. So we'll jump into our topic today, which as mentioned earlier is selling in a scary world. One of the biggest talking points throughout the last few weeks has been whether or not selling is acceptable at the moment. Whether you're a business who've been able to continue selling your existing solutions or have had to diversify to continue to create revenue, almost all businesses have had to consider their approach to their markets. What I want to know is how you've adapted in recent weeks and what you've found has really connected with your customers and prospects in your sales journey. So on this one, I'm going to start with Simon, because Simon, we sell the same thing. One of the biggest challenges we've had, I'd say, in our roles is the fact that we sell solutions which were really at the forefront of this change from office working to remote working. So personally, I found there was a real demand for what we wanted to do, but we still wanted to sell it in the right way and make sure we weren't just being reactive with our customers, but making sure we continue to add value and let them make the informed decisions where we could. So for your customer base, Simon, and the role you do, how have you found that transition, and how have you made sure you continue to do the right thing by your customers?
Yeah, so I think there's really two sides to this question. It's the customer side, the clients that we already have, and then that new business development side.
Yeah.
And I'd say the customer side hasn't changed much. I think from our perspective, we've had to be quite vocal with our customers, let them know that we're here, we can help with things if they need them.
Yeah.
I think that the area that's seen quite a big change in sales, in particular with the outbreak, is new business development. And the things that I've seen that have changed and how we've had to adapt as salespeople is that we've had to revert to a much softer sale.
Yeah.
But also, I think the biggest change of all is that our commitment request has changed. So typically in our market, when we're prospecting new businesses, new organisations, our commitment request normally is we want to book a meeting with you. We want to sit down, have a face-to-face. Can't do that anymore. It's been sort of ruined by this circumstance we're in. So we've had to change that commitment request. And I think often what we've been doing is a lower commitment request, trying to get people on webinars, trying to get people to sign up for calls, which we wouldn't normally go down that route. Yeah. But it's been great to see at the same time. I think it will change how we do things in the future now because of that.
And have you found, so going for that softer sell, the webinars, how have you found it taking that initial touch point and trying to get them on with that soft webinar or call, and then still escalating them through a sales cycle as you would have previously? Has that been a challenge, or has that been something you've enjoyed doing?
Personally, I think we've just added another sequence to our sales process.
Yeah.
So where we'd move normally just to the meeting early on, we're adding in that softer sell, maybe a webinar, call, something, and then we're still going down the normal process if we can hook people in to that initial step. So I don't think necessarily anything else has changed from my perspective. It might have for others in different industries, but for me, it's that soft sell, that commitment request early on that's changed.
I think you could ask everyone this question and everyone would have a different answer when it comes to sales at this point, wouldn't they? And so moving on to Scott, so obviously there's a lot of facets to your business, but I wanted to zone in on the marketing side today. So you, in what you do, you help businesses decide how they put their message out there and how they go to market and how they continue to put themselves out there. So when you've been having those conversations with customers about how they put themselves across, have you been advising customers in a different way, or have you been of the mindset continue doing as you were? What's been your drive on that side of things?
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, I think everyone's had to take had to take stock and think about kind of how they want to come across.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you've got products right now that are in demand, that supply and demand is still there. So there certainly is a way of setting that still in and making sure you're in front of people in the right way. You've got something they need, and it's just putting in front of the right people. The majority of our clients have changed their tone hugely. A lot lighter, you know, as Simon said, it is now that softer approach. Our approach as a business internally has always been very informative, very advice driven.
Yeah.
Help them understand what they need, because most people we know, when they're looking for a product or service, they don't really know what they want. That's why they go to the experts, why they go to the people that sell that in the first place. And the person that stands out and advises in the right way, that helps them through that, they're the ones that they're going to generally deal with. So a lot of our clients have had the advice from ourselves in terms of strategy of, that lighter, softer approach. So I agree with everything that Simon said there. I think it's also to not forget that even during this crisis, there are companies that have done exceptionally well and some obviously that haven't. People still need to buy products and services. Let's not forget that. How you deliver that message is the most crucial point, but people are still buying and people are still selling. And I think that's key to understand. I think one thing I heard from some of our clients was, oh God, we must stop everything. Don't do that. It's the worst thing you can do. You know, by all means, reposition yourself, change the offering, change the tonality of it, but don't stop. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. But yeah, there's my 5 pennies on it.
that term consultative has come up so much throughout this, and obviously that's what a lot of people strive for when they're selling, as it is anyway. But certainly under this microscope, that consultative approach has been so much more valuable, you know, not just focusing on the end goal, but how we can help people in the interim and get them to make the most of what they're doing already. And I said it in countless episodes of this so far, but I had an experience quite early on where I spoke to someone and they said, we're not in a position to do anything at the moment, but it's those people that give us that free advice and free support right at this time that we'll be looking to work with afterwards. And certainly in the public media, you see certain large corporations who might not have treated their staff in the right manner, and there really does seem to be an atmosphere across people that we want to work with those businesses that have done right at this time. We're not interested in putting our money to those businesses that didn't look after customers and didn't look after staff in the right way. I think that will really come to light in the following months. I wanted to touch on your side there as well, Frazer, because obviously what you sell is involved in that marketing piece, and you predominantly, correct me if I'm wrong and my understanding of it isn't right, but you sell fantastic news stories and great news that businesses have when they're succeeding. And obviously at the moment, businesses there's challenges there, but there is still good news out there, as Scott's quite correctly alluded to. There are businesses that are thriving. So how have you gone to market? How have you approached people to put those good stories across?
People, I think one thing that I've taken probably in the last 6 months, but also in the last 10 weeks, is we're news junkies now more than ever. That everything has to be imminent. People want to know about it straight away. So the business communities in Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes have continued to do well. Yes, some people have postponed their activity, but they will continue that on. We had to make a big change decision in April edition, where we were sending out nearly 11,000 copies of our magazine to 90% of the businesses had their doors closed because nobody was there. So we took the decision to go online, which as a page by page read is something that we've never done, because our USP with the publication is the look, the touch, the feel, and the interaction that way. But the online version has gone down brilliantly because we've adapted, and it's fully interactive and so much more accessible for people. It's nearly on par with what the publication is, but there's an argument, and Scott touched on it there, that people automatically want to stop what they're doing. We're going to stop. We're going to look what's happening. But I think people that have continued, if not put the foot on the accelerator and increased it, are the ones that are more visual, and they're the ones that people remember. And I think one of the biggest things out of this, again, is what you've said, is the relationship side, that helping your staff, your customers, but also your clients. And your clients will remember that the whole way through. The relationships, I believe, have got stronger throughout this. And business has thrived because we've had to adapt. If you carry on, what's the saying? If you carry on doing the same thing, nothing will change. Whereas if you do something different, something will change. And it's just that little touchlight of paper that will spark it on.
And one of the ways I wanted to mention as well that you guys have kind of differentiated yourself and put yourself out there is the All Things Arms that you've been doing, that business community that a lot of people have lent on throughout this time. So have you found that that's had a really positive response as well, and brought new customers your way?
Annoyingly, not for us, no. Yeah. But we know that people who have attended the ATB Arms have done business with each other, because it's a place where people can come and relax and have a laugh for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and just enjoy themselves. So we work extremely closely. Our bubble is Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes. Anything outside of that, it probably could be said it's not relevant to us at the moment.
I'm just going to get the door. Would you mind one moment, Frazer? Sorry. That's the joy of recording at home, isn't it? 1 second. Sorry, guys. You wouldn't get that in the office, would you? Where were you, Frazer? Apologies for interrupting your
You interrupted me. No, was it Amazon?
What was that, sorry?
I said, was it Amazon?
It was. I've chucked it on the floor elsewhere. It was ASOS. I've ordered some polo tops because I felt like I needed to mix things up whilst I'm working from home.
Are they slightly bigger ones? Because I've had to order bigger clothes because mine are shrunk.
I've managed to lose some weight in all of this craziness. I'm quite impressed with myself.
Well, you need to do a webinar on that, Connor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That'd be a good market. Sorry, so Frazer, as you were saying, we interrupted. There's been people doing business within the ATB arms and the community.
Yeah. There's people talking to each other because it's a great opportunity at the moment to find new people to understand what they do. Like we're all heavily involved in a networking scene, but you can sometimes concentrate on that one circle of influence, but then you need to step out of that and go into another circle. And I think the downside of everybody being confined to home has helped people get a wider net to catch with. But yeah, we're selling. We're as salespeople, we're selling 100% of the time, whether it's your product, yourself, your company, your services, you're always selling. But I think now is nobody wants a hard sell at the moment. It's almost it's a helping sell.
Yeah.
The age old question of what's in it for me. And at the moment, if you've diversified your business, there's so much in it. So much in it.
It's an interesting point, that diversification one. It's one that I put on my LinkedIn and asked the question in Jules's webinar. So that leads us on quite nicely to yourself, Jules. So obviously there's one element of it where you've obviously got to continue bringing customers to your business, but I wanted to zone in on the webinar you did the other day, selling in a pandemic. Tried to distance my title from that somewhat, so that's to avoid the plagiarism element, but absolutely fantastic. I'm sure you've got recordings that people can rewatch if they want off the back of you. What was it that drove you to put that out there and put this series of webinars out there?
Well, I think one of the really interesting things for me is I'm kind of sitting back watching all of this, and it's making my day in so many ways. I have talked about selling in this way, in the consultative and the helping way for years, absolutely years. This is how we should all have been selling before pandemic. And what is absolutely delightful is now everybody's discovering this wonderful new way of selling, which is working because it's about the customer. It's always got to be 100% about the customer. You know, when you look at statistics, I think I mentioned in my webinar, Connor, the buyer is 70% of the way down their buying journey before they even speak to a salesperson. You know, we're just not in that position we used to be in sales. We shouldn't be hard selling. We shouldn't be driving the sale. We should be nurturing the sale. And I think that's really evident in the people who are being successful right now. They're visible, they're empathetic, they understand the buyer's world. That's absolutely critical now. It's not about what we want to sell, it's about what the buyers want to buy. And if we nurture that, we'll have customers for life because they'll tell everyone else about the experience that they had with us. So it's about experience now and connection and conversation. So this is magic for me, all of this stuff that's going on. I adore it. My whole book is based on the relationship of selling.
And so that statistic you mentioned there, I spoke to you away from this. I mentioned that was the one that really stuck out for me. So when I read that statistic where they're 70% down their decision making before they've even reached out to a sales representative, for me that shows that there's still, regardless of what's going on, a massive importance in proactively putting yourself out there and trying to catch people before they embark on that journey. Obviously it's a slightly harder thing to do at the moment, I think, to get in there early and make those introductions. But would you agree that that's still, in the right way, something that's massively important to keep doing that proactive searching for clients in this time?
Yeah, it's massively important. And I think the way we're selling now, and Scott's on the call, from the marketing perspective, Scott, I believe marketing and sales are closer than they've ever been before. It's almost the same thing, and I get slated by marketeers for saying that, but I mean it in the best way possible. We have to create this authority, the personal brand. You have to know who I am, and by me being visible continually with that consistent message as to how I help you, that's when you suddenly, in this pandemic, you say, I need you now, and I've been watching you and following your content, Jules, and I want to work with you. And I've seen this happen because I've been visible. So salespeople now have to be out there visible and giving their knowledge and showing their authority and what they're good at and their expertise. And that's how we connect and build great relationships. It's not just that in the moment selling piece anymore.
That what you mentioned there about sales and marketing being closer than they've ever been before, I completely agree with that. And it's, you know, doing this session that I've been doing, you know, I was really conscious that for me with the environment we're in, I wanted to start taking on that LinkedIn and personal brand side of things and doing stuff like this. And then Simon can agree, you know, one of the things we at ACS have been doing is webinars, and we've really had to take those on board, haven't we, Simon, and drive them through, which is probably something where before all of this, you know, we did sessions like that, we'd bring people to ACS House, but we certainly wouldn't have put the emphasis on them that we do now. That's pretty fair to say, isn't it, Simon?
Definitely
Yeah.
fair to say.
And,
It's about showing people who you are. So not just what you know, but actually who you are, because people connect with people. So suddenly if I get this really lovely vibe about your language and your authenticity and actually the passion you have for your subject, these are the reasons now why we connect and buy. It's not just about price and it's not just about timing, actually. It can also be about that connection and the relationship.
the personality side's so important, isn't it? I don't want to say it frustrates me, but I've always found on LinkedIn, whenever I put a post out there that's almost not about work, they're the ones that people engage with the most. I put one about the football team I used to play for. Frazer and Ben and co sent me a lovely Warner Edwards hamper for winning the quiz quite controversially on Thursday. That was one of my most engaged with posts recently, and it was nothing directly to do with work, but people get to see you, don't they? And they buy into that side of stuff.
That's it, you know. And there's one other thing I want to just say, which I think everyone can think about here, is that the greatest asset you have right now is you personally. I call it the UHP. So instead of having a USP, it's the unique human proposition, because that is absolutely critical. It's how you stand out from the crowd. There's no other you on the planet. So this is really magic.
I have to say, it's the old, you know, slogan, isn't it? You know, people buy from people, and that's absolutely true. You know, I think talking from a marketing perspective, it's great to have a strong brand that your sales team and your forward-facing team might represent. But people do still buy from people. This whole analogy of standing in front of somebody, you know, and talking with them. We've all now got to look at our digital footprint as well. What do we look like as an individual online as well? You know, what does our LinkedIn profile say about us right now? What does that content look like? If you're hammering home, you know, statements and stats and selling on LinkedIn day in, day out, you know, it's not surprising when you do put something personal out, Connor, that all of a sudden people engage with you. You're human again, you know, people can engage. And I think that's really important when we're sharing content, and we've got to think about what we look like now, both as humans, but also what our digital self looks like online. And that's crucial right now, I think.
Brilliant. I just to go back around with a couple more questions again, and following on from what Jules has mentioned there about demonstrating the knowledge, and you touched on your own book there, Jules. So Simon, you've got your own book, which I only found out about recently, but I've got a copy waiting to read, and it's all about kind of that sales process. And I suppose, would you say it's fair to say the science behind sales and following that procedure to make sure you maximize your sales journey? Is that a fair way to summarize it? Would you change that?
It's fair. It's fair. Connor, who knows me well, knows I'm particular. Connor, would that be a nice word to say?
yeah, I'll give you that.
I'm probably too much process driven in a way, but the things I always think is that where sales success comes from most of the time is that work that we do in the background. It's not the stuff we do always at the forefront when we're with a customer or trying to close a sale. It's all them things that we do in our prospecting, in our preparation, in our planning, and that's often where I especially see unorganized salespeople fall down. And Connor and I could probably, no, you're not, you're organized. We could probably name a few. And they'll be fantastic in front of customers and in meetings and can pitch like the best in the world. But they don't do all the background work that they need to. And that's kind of what my book is about, of what them things that we do in the background to make us successful in sales.
I can back that. When I first started working with Simon, it was scary to see someone so meticulous and organised with their work. I was never very well organised before working with Simon, and I've learnt a lot there. But no, and it's all very good. But my question to you, Simon, is: you wrote that book. Obviously, in recent weeks, there's been a lot of things that have gone on. If you were to write that book again now, would a lot have changed? Or do you feel the process, regardless of the fact that there's going to be little bits that we add in and different approaches, do you still feel like there's that same process that you've written about and explored in your book?
Really good question.
Thank you.
Do I think things have changed? Yes, I think sales has changed. From now on in, sales will be different, very different. Does that mean the concepts in the book don't apply? No, they all apply. I think the biggest change in sales that we're going to see is the way we prospect in the future, how we bring on board new customers. I don't think the account management piece or that side is going to change too much. I really think it's how we attain new business that it's going to change in the future.
Brilliant, thank you. And I wanted to ask Scott a question as well. So you've been doing a podcast series whilst all of this has been going on. I got to feature as a guest on that, which was very fun, so thank you for having me. When you did that podcast series again, so what was your motivation behind that? Was it, as Jules has said, demonstrating that knowledge and that understanding and expertise in your role? Was it to add a different facet to what you do as a business? What drove you to start that in the midst of everything that's going on?
Yeah, so we decided that we would do podcasts about 9 months ago, actually. We have a second office in Milton Keynes, as you're probably aware, Connor, and that was geared up with, all the facilities possible to host those professionally. Unfortunately, we're very busy. That has continued as such. Then came lockdown. Lots of great time on your own. So it actually drove it forward a lot quicker. So actually we took the chance, as well as updating processes and all the kind of stuff we've been doing behind the scenes. It gave us the time to focus on podcasts. It gave us the time to focus on these other things that we've been doing. The real drive actually behind it, and was always there, was about literally, as the title suggests, putting the spotlight on other people. It was actually so many fantastic businesses in Milton Keynes, in Northamptonshire and further afield, that perhaps don't get seen as much, unless they're in the local magazines and publications, like Frazer, for example. They just don't get the coverage that they're entitled to. So the idea for us was to, let's interview them. Let's get them some airtime. Let's get them in front of our connections, our audience. And it's worked really well, not just for ourselves. It's been interesting actually for me finding out about what people have been doing, how they've adapted, how they've pivoted is a new term expression, isn't it? But actually find out how it's affected them really, and what they're going to be doing moving forward. So that was the whole drive behind it, nothing more than that. Lockdown simply gave us the chance and the time to start it properly. And
what I'll also add, Scott, is if you want to put that series of podcasts in the comments when I post this up, feel free to do so, because obviously I was on one of them, had the chance to listen to a few of them, and they are really interesting and take that deeper look into how people have adapted with everything that's going on. And obviously just talking there around what you've been doing around digital and putting yourself out there. Frazer, you referenced it earlier about how you guys have had to really change and adapt and move forward with that. Do you think, Frazer, that you're going to, when normality returns, do you still want to see as a business that continual embracement of the digital world, or do you think that you'll snap back to how you were before, or do you think there's that happy medium when we start to return to normal for you as a business?
I think it's 50-50 because, well, probably 60-40, because we love seeing that magazine. We like walking into car dealerships, into theatres, into hotels and seeing them on site, seeing them open, seeing people reading it, engaging with it. But then also, when I talk about our net, our readership levels are at an all-time high because anybody can read the publication. Whereas from a business point of view, we're never going to send 100,000 copies of our magazine because there'd be no point doing that. I think we may carry it on, but I also, half of me thinks we may knock it on the head and go purely just on print because we're a fan of it. I think listening to a lot of the bits of what people said, and me and Ben talk about this a lot, of being the master of our trade, not being the jack of all, and to concentrate on that print one. And when people pick it up, and there's that need, there's that want and that must, whereas on the internet you can click, 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 and it takes away a little bit of the engagement to the client, but also it's so accessible. It's real, it's like I said, 50-50, I think.
There's a real quality though. So obviously I read the All Things publication in print, and I get what you mean. There is a real quality behind the look, the feel. I suppose that's part of the prestige when you're speaking to customers around why they want to be part of that, isn't there? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's we want to be, and I think we are. We want to be the best in our field. We want that. We want clients and customers to come to us to feature in that. And yeah, that's where I think you get a real feel for it. And it's the how many times people say to me, I love the smell of the magazine. Well, no, it is. You talk to anyone about it, you love the smell of it. And yeah, I think that'll be quite nostalgic when people get to open that back up.
I think if you're in a reception area of the building now and you start smelling magazines, though, that's going to seriously breach some COVID.
Well, possibly. As long as you don't lick it, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, you'll be fine. I do hope you guys continue to do some of the virtual stuff. One of the things I've been a real champion for with all this virtual networking is I hope it carries on beyond this, because what we've seen is a lot of people who weren't involved in the networking world beforehand and didn't have the knowledge or the capacity to do so. People that were working at home already. And for me, one of the nicest things to see is they've really been embraced in the new networking community. I think perfect example for me, Frazer, that I think of, and I could be speaking out of turn and he was already networking it because I wasn't doing much of it beforehand. But Chris from Velo, who's in the virtual pub every week, who did the cycling challenge. I'd never spoke to Chris before all of this, wasn't aware of the business, but he's been present at every one, and I've got to know him relatively well. And I just hope that we don't completely lose that virtual networking element and these virtual events, so that those people can still comfortably and easily take part in our business community. I think that's been a really nice part of it.
Yeah, we're gonna, off the back with the ATV Arms, we never started that as a networking event.
No,
we never started it as a sale. We never wanted anything out of it. We just wanted, because you know us, we're sociable guys. We get around and we go and see people. And it was that case of it was as much as a release for us as it was for everybody else. But hopefully at the end of the ATV Arms, we won't continue the virtual thing, but we're going to continue a real life ATV Arms. So to put back into the food and drink sector that have missed out in the last 3 months, and possibly a 4th and 5th month, is the ATV Arms will go to a pub probably once a month in Milton Keynes, then back into Northampton, and we'll continue to bring those people together, because it will give back to that pub. It will be some money in the coffers for them, but also it keeps that engagement of our regulars, our locals, still seeing each other.
So Simon, if you see me in a pub when we're back in the office during hours, I'm working.
That's it. This is justification for it.
Yes, cheers, Frazer. I'll pay you afterwards. Brilliant. And Jules, again, similar question to yourself. So obviously you're well known for your public speaking. You've been doing an increased amount of digital events and webinars, and for your training, you've been embracing digital. Do you feel that digital world still has the same value in your business, and will that continue to be a part of what you do when, I'll use the term again, normality returns? How do you envisage the future for your business?
Yeah, the new norm, isn't it? We're all calling it. It's interesting. I lost £25,000 overnight because of speaking and workshops, which is my face-to-face business. So it was hard. I got hit. And I'm a small business, so that was a lot of money for me. But I was already working digitally, so in some respects it wasn't difficult for me to switch. I think what's been really interesting is things like Zoom fatigue, which some of you may have heard talked about, which I think we've probably all experienced. And so actually, if you're going to take things like training and coaching online, you've got to be really aware of those windows now. And so the windows are shorter, the time's shorter. Actually, we're more focused, which is brilliant. And I think, yes, I will continue to do my digital work. I hope I can get out speaking again. It's amazing. There's nothing like that. I've done live speaking online, but it's still not the same. I can't feel and hear the audience like I can when I'm on a stage. So I hope that comes back. But yeah, so I think I will continue to do digital and maybe more. I love doing the webinars. So I do a podcast. So yeah, I'm definitely going to stay in the digital world for sure.
What's and again, feel free to link this one when I post it on LinkedIn. The next webinar you've got, is that the one around story selling?
It's on about why stories sell, actually, which is, again, something I think more people are embracing because they can't hard sell perhaps like they used to. And the whole statistics piece, you might remember I said another statistic, which is ironic, but 63% of people remember stories and only 5% remember stats. Yeah. Which is really quite something. So it's why stories sell, and it's on the 1st of June at 2:00 on Zoom. So, and all it costs you is your time. You know, I'd love you to come along.
Yeah, feel free to link that in the comments. One point you made there around the Zoom fatigue. So me and Simon have had a few conversations around this.
Yeah.
And the thing I certainly experienced at first was, you meet someone in person, and if you get on with them, you can sit down for 2 hours just talking, finding out about them and their business, and it's really nice. But I feel like when you're on the online chats, because of how much distraction there is, everyone's in different environments. So Frazer, me and you have had plenty of calls where the young ones just come in and had to take away your attention for a moment. Yeah. I've been really conscious that those hour and a half talks, it's so much harder to keep attention, isn't it? Me and Simon have been saying that for the main, when we have those initial chats with people, 30-40 minute sessions, and if there's value in it, book in repeat sessions and do more bite-sized chunks. So is that, I'll put that to everyone, is that everyone found that when they've been having those conversations with customers that might have been longer traditionally?
Definitely for me, yeah definitely.
You to the point more in your conversations. It's an interesting thing is I've never had as much free time in my working day of what I've had now, which they would have been spent in the pub with you, Connor, but don't tell anyone. But it's funny because you can't, if you sit at your desk from 9 till 5, 8 till 4, whatever it is you work, you will go mental because you haven't got that break or that interaction. And the Zoom calls, I've come away from online networking. The only online aspect I do is this one that I did with Connor and our ATB arms, because I just don't enjoy it. I don't get the buzz or the feel. Whether I'm traditional or old school, I like to see people read their body language and you can engage with them. And the distractions things, it's huge. People's kids, well, my kids, dogs, cats, family members. My wife's been turfed out. I've told her to go out. So because I can concentrate. Yeah. And I need that aspect of it, that I need to be able to focus on what I'm doing. But the shorter ones, you are right, Connor. I could go to somebody and be there for 2.5 hours. Yeah. Now I could probably do it in 35 minutes because I'm conscious of the time.
I think there's value as well, isn't it? In what I've found is by breaking it up into those every couple of weeks, having a session, we want, ultimately for me, and again, I've had this conversation with Simon, you want to keep that momentum building towards when you can meet these people in person again. So if you can break that up into, let's every couple of weeks have a chat, delve into different areas, hopefully it moves us towards that point when the new norm returns and we can see them face to face. Simon, I know you agree with me in the main here, but if you've got any, cracking. And Scott, any thoughts?
No, I think it's interesting. I mean, some of our clients, traditionally have been very used to jumping in the cars, hitting the roads, couple-hour drive for what is probably a 30-minute, 40-minute conversation. I think people have very quickly learned that you don't need to do that. You need, actually, if anything, I'd like to see a lot more time spent with clients and relationships like that. A quick Zoom, Connor, if I spoke to you 3 or 4 times a week, but only for 5-10 minutes at a time, we probably get much more value out of that than meeting up once a Friday for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So I think, I think if that continues, that'd be lovely. It'd be really good to see as well.
Off the back of this as well, off the back of this as well, is that I found there shouldn't be an excuse not to have a meeting at the end of this.
Yeah.
I can only do a week on Tuesday because I've got appointments in the office. I need to do this, that, and the other. As Scott just said, let's schedule a 30-minute Zoom call.
Yeah.
You could be sitting anywhere in the world doing whatever you want, and we all have got more than half an hour free.
Yeah, can I just say as well, this is so true. This is so true, because you think how many conversations you've had that you may not have had. Because I've had so many. I've connected with people that I made excuses, not in a bad way, but I had excuses not to speak to them. And I've had these amazing conversations. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
It's been brilliant.
Simon, you were about to say something. Sorry.
Has anybody been using any scheduling tools, for example? It's quite interesting that, we talk about booking Zoom calls and Teams calls and so on. Traditionally, if you're meeting someone face-to-face in networking, it's, we'll check our calendar, we'll go through it, give me a call when you get back to the office and so on. We use HubSpot naturally as our CRM, and actually for ourselves, to be able to book a call that's linked to our calendar, that can flick through, book a time, get it in. We've seen a real flurry of those meetings coming through our calendar system. I actually look forward now, quite excited to wake up in the morning and see what the day looks like and who I'm going to be meeting. Yeah. Has anybody else sort of gone through that process recently?
I use Calendly, Scott. I also have HubSpot, but I suppose I'm not using it in the volume way that some people may. So I have a Calendly, and it's amazing. I can connect it to my Zoom. I can connect it to Stripe. If I want to actually take a payment for a session, it's fabulous. I love it. I get quite excited about my Calendly links. Such a sad person, I know.
Simon, you were going to make a point there as well. Sorry, what was it you were about to say?
My point was that I don't think in the new norm, as you say it, I don't think that Zoom Teams meetings are ever going to replace that face-to-face meeting in my view, because I still think I look at the level of influence that has with a buyer, and I still think if I have a face-to-face meeting with a buyer and my competitor has a Zoom call, then 9 times out of 10 I'm going to win that opportunity. Where I do think it comes in quite well and quite pertinent is for those clients that maybe are located 3 hours drive away, that maybe are below our normal client size, or when our schedules are really tight and we're struggling to meet with a person. That's how I see it changing, and that's using this platform moving forward. But I've seen a lot on social platforms about people thinking that this is going to be the new norm, in that we're always going to do this, and I personally don't think that'll be the case. At least I hope it won't be. Anyway.
Yeah, I think a mix is always good. If you look at marketing and selling and reaching out to new clients, you need the mix. I agree that there's nothing like face-to-face, nothing. You're never going to beat it. But I think that the reasons you've just said and what Scott said as well, I think we can definitely use this more than we ever did before. Definitely.
Yeah, and Simon, with what you said there about those meetings where maybe you weren't quite sure and stuff like that, it allows us to be so much more productive, doesn't it? You look at the environmental benefits if you want to start delving into that side of things, but it just means that I think after this we can become so much more concise and get so much more done with our days because we utilize the tools that are there to us. I think there's a whole load of politics that comes out the other side of it, which we'll only learn as it comes towards it. But no, and thank everyone for your input there. That was really good. Obviously, we've discussed some points there. So Jules, we've got your webinars. Scott, we've got your podcast, other chaps as well, ATB Arms, Frazer, Simon Book. If you guys want to put anything that you've found really useful or anything that you want to link to your own stuff, in the comments, you're more than welcome to do so, because it would be great to see more people take up on the stuff that you guys have been offering throughout this. So that's grand. Thank you for that. I'm sure there's lots of other points we can look at. I think certainly be interesting to delve into the prospecting side of it more on a future episode and how we go out to market for new clients. That'll be something we look to, but all of your input there was brilliant, so thank you. As always, when I do these sessions, I always like, once we've done the main topic, to open up the table to a question. So if anyone's got a question for another member of the table or to the table in general, whether it's Corona related or not, please do feel free to put that to the table if anyone's got one.
I've got a question.
Go for it, Fraser. Simon did raise his hand, so we'll come to you afterwards, Simon.
I can't see anybody. All I can see is your initials. I don't know what we refer to back to normality, or when things are normal. What is the definition of normal now?
Yeah.
Because was normal before this happened, or were we just accustomed to it because that's all we knew? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
it makes great sense. Yeah. Do you want me to just quickly?
Go.
I think it's interesting how humans form habits. It's Frazer, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's interesting how we form habits, and actually, when you think it takes about 28 days, I think is the number of days to form a habit. So actually, our normal is what's happened probably for the last 28 days. So I don't think it will ever be the same as what our normal was before. And also, I hope we've learned a lot of things in this period, which means we've probably reviewed and refined and improved, ready for this new normal. Yeah, I think we should ever be changing. You said it yourself. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So that's kind of how I see it, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, because I think I'm going to come out the back of this probably a better person and stronger in what I do. Whereas that first week, 2 weeks of the lockdown, nobody knew anything, did they?
No.
And we've learned, adapted, and I think we've grown. And Scott, we spoke about this the other day, didn't we? That you guys are recruiting and growing through this as well. And what we are today, I think, is normal.
Yeah. I think what's nice as well is that there's lots of things that have changed. People and companies have fast-tracked digital transformation. People that wouldn't even thought about it have had to do that as well. Yeah. So everything's running 1,000 miles an hour now, which is brilliant, and it's all going in the right direction as well. There's lots of great things that are coming from this as well, in what should be a quite negative situation. We can't forget, those really bad points around it, but to focus on the real positives, things like kindness, for example. It was Mental Health Awareness last week, as we all know, and the amount of people I saw online sharing that information, sharing their experiences. And I think generally through the last, certainly 9-10 weeks where we've been sort of away from the office, I've experienced kindness from all sorts of people. And hopefully we've been projecting the same as well. Hopefully that lasts as well. Hopefully we don't lose that element of what that is now.
We don't want to revert to those bad habits, do we? I completely agree. It's a work in progress, and I think whilst you're right, there's good stuff to come out of it. There has been challenges. I do think it's important to not forget that and address that. And as Fraser's highlighted, hopefully it forms you into a better person and a better at your job after this. I mean, I've had the personal challenge. My biggest thing that I've struggled with was kind of my motivations in my role, because my role's completely changed. If you'd have asked me if I'd have signed up to a role where I work from home, a year and 3 months ago, year and 4 months ago, roughly, it was I joined Simon, wasn't it? I would never have said yes to a role where I work from home. It's not my nature. I'm an office person. I enjoy being around people. I enjoy being probably too loud at some point. Simon can nod or shake his head in whichever he agrees. And that's been a real challenge for me. So realigning myself to that hasn't been easy. And then Simon, you obviously manage quite a varied team, don't you? Where you've got some people right at the start of their career, and then people who are further on than that. So you'll have seen that, in terms of managing our team and approaching that side of things, won't you?
Completely.
Yeah.
If I go back to Fraser's question, I think it's kind of the natural evolution of just working environments. So if I go back to the start of my career selling water heating and ventilation, the fancy word. So I was working with some people who had come from that age of, we used to work out the yellow pages, or we used to queue at a phone box for our 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock calls with our boss. And that changed with technology being the driver. I think this is just a different evolution in sales. It's not technology is the driver. It's a freak outbreak that actually we've seen other ways of working and ways that maybe we could do things better, that we're now going to add and change to our sales acumen and process moving forward.
It's an interesting, because we talk about all these new stuff. So we sell technology, so we always want to encourage the use of it. And Scott's in the room, so Scott, you fully embrace the digital side of things, and all of these evolutions that come across and the different things that we can do. I still find that some of my best results come from door knocking, an age-old tradition where you just get in front of people and speak. So, as Fraser said, new normal. I suppose, like, but it makes it interesting. Is there ever a normal? Do you know what I mean? Is there ever a normal where this is the standard, or should we always just start to bring in little different bits and pieces that we learn along the way, but not lose sight of what worked originally? And I don't think we'll ever go back to what we considered normal to be. Was it normal, as you say, Fraser? Was it ever normal?
You might not be allowed to knock on doors, Connor. You got to look at that.
Yeah.
Hypothetically saying that whole approach is you've got to be able to look at it. That if you look at work patterns of, like, my job, trying to get hold of people for the first couple of weeks was incredible. Companies that weren't diverting calls, mobile switched off, nobody communicating. Whereas if you want to go and see somebody, you know what day they're there, they might not be there on that day anymore. So it's adapted. I think every day you can learn what you do. You learn something new every single day and keep adding that to your repertoire. But stay as, and I think Jules said it, or Scott said it, people by people. That doesn't matter what skill set you have, as long as you're a people person, people do business with you.
And the other thing I think about is that we're thinking about how we may change as salespeople, but also just be aware how the buyers may change in all of this, because it's a really important part. Yeah,
definitely. I'm thinking, Fraser, that if I want to continue my door knocking, I could buy like a hazmat suit or something of that nature. I'd stand out, wouldn't I?
Yeah. One of those caricature face mask. That would really scare people. I need to know when Simon started work, when he was queuing up at a phone box. That stuck with me. That has.
He looks too young.
That wasn't me. That was the people I was working with had come from that.
Oh, okay.
That's what I used to do, Simon.
Or I could say it's just really good skincare. So
really good skincare. Well, Simon, if you want to share your skincare routine in the comments below, or we could do a joint webinar. I'll talk about the weight loss and you talk about the skincare. Perfect. We're diversifying. Wonderful. You had a question as well, Simon. So if you wanted to put it out to everyone.
Yeah. So my question is around the sales market in particular, not our sales roles, and how we see it changing when we come out of this. And I'll explain what I mean by my justification of it. So I've seen a lot of businesses, old colleagues, some in sales roles who are incredibly good at their job, who have either been made redundant in these circumstances or they've been furloughed. And for some organisations, they've been forced to go down the furlough route because of cash flow. Others have probably furloughed people that maybe they shouldn't have. And my view is that when we come out of this, is that we're going to see some volatility in the sales market, in that some great candidates who have a great deal of sales acumen are moving to new organisations, or they've been made redundant and they're moving for that reason. I think we're going to see a changing of the guard for many organisations, in my view, in that bring in some high caliber candidates who we wouldn't get before, and that might mean that those low to average performers who aren't going to adapt don't continue with certain businesses. That's my view of what's to come. But I'd like to know what other people's opinions are of what's the sales market going to look like.
I'd love to jump in on here, just more of a kind of generic one. I mean, we traditionally don't have a traditional sales team at all, Simon. So, you know, as people know, I'm generally forward facing, and sort of, you know, Tom Sarson, Laura, you know, people behind me will be at networking events, we'll be on the phone to people and so on. But we don't have that traditional sales force. One thing I can say more generically is since we've been advertising, well, even since lockdown, we've seen a huge spike through our ATS system in applications coming through of people wanting new roles, client partnership managers, through social media, through, you know, designers, you name it, all the roles we have out there, this massive spike in applications. But what's very interesting to see is that caliber you talk about. So if I can relate it to what we're seeing very, very high-end candidates that we wouldn't normally probably have seen come through a general inbound application. We would have had to go out and seek them. coming inbound to us. Maybe they're furloughed in some occasions, maybe they've been let go and so on, you know, through difficult times. But we're seeing a huge flood in the marketplace of really good candidates right now, and what we're looking for, that just weren't there before. So I think that must apply to sales as well. I would imagine that there are going to be these really good salespeople that come through that are changing roles that people are going to be able to attract now.
If I can add to that as well, Simon. So 2 parts to it. I'll add to the portfolio of people moving, as you mentioned. I've touched on this before. I found that, you know, I love the job that I'm in, and I love the company I work for. We do a lot of good stuff, but I do find that you have those periods where I'm sat in front of 2 screens doing tasks and processes, and I'm not in the office, and I'm not surrounded by people that are reinforcing that culture of where I work and why I work there. So I think one other area where you're going to see people moving about is people that throughout this process, where they haven't been related to their brand and why they chose to work there as much as they did previously, will start to question that and put that under a microscope, as well as the changing nature of their job. I think you'll find a lot more highly skilled people, not through the furlough side of things or challenges in their own business, will of their own accord question why they work where they do and look to what else is available. I think in terms of, I am not currently in a position where I have to hire people, so I couldn't speak too much on what happens today. But from my knowledge, sales traditionally is you demonstrate your results and what you've got, and then there's personality as well that's taken into account when someone's looking at what they hire. I think, and Scott will definitely agree with this, I'll be shocked if he doesn't from what he said earlier, I think one of the other key components when people are looking at salespeople moving forward will be they'll look at that digital brand of that salesperson, they'll look at what kind of content they put out there, they'll look at what kind of audience they get when they post this detail out and how they demonstrate their expertise. So I think that social media profile when it comes to salespeople will be much more under the microscope from potential employers, because let's face it, as you said, there probably will be a lot more people out there in the market for those jobs. So I think employers will have to delve that bit deeper to find who's right for their organisations moving forward. I can see your smile, Scott. I can tell you agree on that digital profile side.
I completely agree. You know, because again, it comes back to the digital twin. You know, what do you look like face to face, but what do you look like online? I know through going through the recruitment process more recently, which I never thought I would ever do, interviewing people, recruiting people via a video call is probably the strangest thing I've ever done in my life. Now, I'm sure there's lots of people that have done that for years, but for me, to not have the person in front of you, to ask them the random questions about what's their favourite music and what they like doing at weekends, to see if there's that fit is really strange. And that's been a learning experience for us as well during this. So again, a continuous improvement, right? But that digital footprint they have is probably going to be, one of the most important things moving forward. Because they're representing your own brand. If they're coming to you, a business, what they're projecting through their social profiles is going to pull back to the company. And the other point you made, obviously, about culture as well, it's I think key. People buy from people, but people also want to work for brands that look after them. Yeah, that really means something. I think there's going to be lots of people moving back into the workplace that may be feeling that, well, why was I furloughed? Why was I off when, I didn't want to be? I wanted to work. You'll also have people there that have been working that weren't furloughed, that have been working exceptionally hard in difficult circumstances, thinking, oh, well, why have they been on holiday? That's
going to be a political battle in the office, isn't it?
I think that will go with salespeople as well. I think that goes across the board. So,
Jules, you train these sales teams. What do you think the sales market and sales professionals will look like in the months after this?
I think it's lovely to hear all your thoughts, actually, because it's really fueled what I've been thinking. I think the first thing I wanted to say, which you kind of said, Connor, so people have had time to reevaluate who they are. So this personal career of theirs and their personal journey, what they love, life's become a different viewpoint for people being stuck in isolation. That's one thing. But the second thing I think that is massively important that Scott said is your digital brand, and that personal brand being real and true. So if you met me face to face, I would completely match how you see me online. And this is huge. This, I think, will be more important than your results. And I'll tell you why, because we're going to sell different. Hallelujah, but we are going to sell different to how we ever sold before. So it won't be about numbers and results. It's going to be about relationships and authority and how you set yourself apart, your UHP. That's how I see it now. And that's how I train salespeople, very much so.
Frazer, any thoughts around Simon's point?
The digital side is, we spoke the other day, Connor, about your why of why you go to work. And that's a massive important question that I ask people, but also is brand me. Connor is a brand, Simon is a brand, Jules is a brand, Scott's a brand, and you go into that bigger side of it. But me and Ben, we love football. We use a lot of football analogies, and I think a lot of people look at their squad and go, right, my striker, I need somebody else on the bench because he hasn't been or she hasn't been firing as well as they should have. My defense is a bit leaky, and I think there will be people will change. And again, going back to the time element, you never had as much time to look at your team because we're all busy. We're all busy doing meetings, doing training, doing sales, whatever it is. But now you can sit back and see that you may have 4 people doing a job that maybe 2 or 3 people could do because they've been able to do it in this time. But I really, truly believe that once we're allowed to go out of our doors and bring our workforce back up to speed, it will be reminiscent of the false start that was January. Everybody came out the blocks in January because the 2019 was out the way, and then it was a false start. Flags went up, we had to restart, but we haven't come out yet. And I think July, August, there's going to be some really good business done because people need it, and that's that why they need it. So yeah, the sales thing, I think, is what we've said already. It's changed, it's adapted, but your team is the most vital thing at the moment.
Does that marry up to your thoughts, Simon, the feedback you've heard? Is there anything you'd add to that from your perspective?
No, it's interesting to see other perspectives, but I think they all talk about the same point in essence, that the market is going to change when we come out of this. Good couple of questions there, guys. So no, thank you for that.
We're towards the end now. I do a little bit of fun at the end. We do a tiebreaker question for the table. The prize, if you win, is a high five from me in person the next time I see you at a networking event. We don't do any virtual high fives here, so you have my promise you'll receive that. Frazer, did you win the first time? Have I got a vague memory of you winning?
I feel really bad, but I can't remember.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Your high five, Connor.
Yeah, well, we can do a double high five if you win. So that's great. So get thinking, guys, because I want to know your guesses on how many iPhones have been sold since production began. And this statistic is as of the 11th of February, 2020. I'll let you know it's in the early billions. So have a little think. Closest person to it wins. In the early billions. How many iPhones have been sold?
Can you define early, Connor?
Between 1 and 5 billion. We'll go with that.
that's quite.
Yeah.
Between 1 and 5. Right, I've got one.
Cool, cracking. So we'll go round. So we'll start with Scott.
First.
So 3.2.
3.2. Okay, Frazer.
I'm really annoyed, Scott, because mine was 3.2. I'll go 3.15.
3.15. Jules.
2.1.
2.1. Simon.
3.5.
Okay. Jules was 0.1 billion off. It's 2.1 billion.
Yeah.
So Jules, you win. You have my word. You will receive a high five once we're allowed to see people in person again. So cracking.
Fabulous. I look forward to that.
Thank you very much, guys. Been a really, really good conversation today. Really enjoyed it and loved all your input. As I mentioned, if you've got anything you want to put in the comments below when I post this, which will probably be tomorrow, do feel free to do so. We will return with another roundtable next week. I added this bit in last week and I got it perfectly, so fingers crossed to get it done today. We will return with another roundtable next week with some more shiny new faces ready to tackle the tantalizing topics of today. Putting myself under pressure there, aren't I? If you're watching this and there's any topics you'd like to see or you'd like to be part of the Business Continues Virtual Roundtable, please do comment below and drop me a message. Otherwise, thank you again to my guests and hope you all have a great rest of the week. Take care, guys. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.